The fire did not behave like normal fire. It twisted upward along the walls of the royal spire, burning without smoke, glowing white and blue as if the air itself had turned against the structure. Gravity inside the tower failed in pulses. Metal beams bent like soft clay. Energy shields flickered and died one by one. The alarm rang across the capital. A deep sound that made even hardened alien soldiers hesitate. Inside the highest chamber, Princess Seralith lay trapped beneath a collapsed crystal arch. Her breathing was shallow. The heat was already cracking the delicate armor around her shoulders. Every automated rescue drone that entered the chamber failed within seconds. Their systems overheated. Their logic cores froze when the physics stopped making sense. Outside the chamber, members of the Queen's Guard stood frozen. They were tall, scaled beings with armor grown from living alloys. They were warriors bred for battle, trained since birth, yet none of them moved forward. The fire was too unstable, too violent, too unpredictable. "It is impossible," one of them said, voice tight with fear. "No one can survive inside." Another lowered his weapon. "We must accept the loss." Behind them, pressed against the wall, was a human. His name was Elias Ward. He was an engineer, not a soldier. He wore a simple emergency suit, already scorched from helping evacuate lower levels. His face was streaked with ash and blood. His hands shook not from fear, but from exhaustion. He listened to the guards speak as if the words were distant, unreal. "Accept the loss." He looked past them, through the shattered doorway, into the burning chamber. He could see the princess's silhouette through the flames. Small, still. Elias did not ask permission. He moved. "Human, stop!" One of the guards shouted. Too late. Elias ran. The heat slammed into him like a physical wall. His suit screamed warnings into his ear. Systems already failing. The air burned his lungs with every breath. Gravity shifted, throwing him sideways, then down, then up again. He slammed into a wall, rolled, forced himself to stand. Every instinct told him to turn back. Every calculation said he would die. He kept going. Humans were not the strongest species in the Alliance, not the fastest, not the most durable. But they had something that did not show up on scans or simulations. When faced with a clear choice between safety and action, many of them chose action without stopping to ask if it was smart. Elias crawled the last meters, fingers blistering as he grabbed the crystal arch. It was hot enough to glow. He screamed as skin burned through his gloves. But he lifted. Muscles tore. His vision blurred. The arch shifted just enough. He dragged the princess free. She was lighter than he expected. Or maybe adrenaline made her feel that way. He wrapped her in his body, shielding her as best he could, and turned back toward the exit. The chamber reacted. The fire surged, drawn to motion. A blast of heat threw Elias off his feet. He hit the ground hard, his suit finally failing completely. The world narrowed to pain and noise. He crawled. 1 meter, 2. He did not remember standing. But suddenly he was upright, staggering through the doorway. Hands caught him. Strong arms pulled both him and the princess out of the flames. The fire collapsed inward behind them, sealing the chamber in a silent explosion of light. For a moment, no one spoke. The guards stared at Elias as if he were something new and dangerous. Medical teams rushed forward, taking the princess, checking her vitals. She was alive, unconscious, but stable. Elias tried to speak. No sound came out. His legs gave out, and he collapsed to the floor. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was the expression on the guards' faces. They were afraid. When Elias woke, the ceiling above him was smooth and white, glowing softly. The smell of antiseptic filled the air. Pain spread through his body in slow waves, deep and sharp. He tried to move and failed. A soft mechanical voice spoke. "Remain still. Your injuries are severe." He turned his head slightly. A medical drone hovered nearby, its limbs adjusting instruments attached to his chest and arms. His hands were wrapped in regeneration gel. Burn scars covered his forearms, already being treated. "You survived," the drone continued. This outcome was statistically unlikely. Elias closed his eyes. "Yeah," he whispered. "I hear that a lot." Time passed strangely after that. He drifted in and out of sleep. When he was awake, he heard voices outside the room. Alien voices. Urgent. Confused. One word came up again and again. Human. Days later, the Queen summoned him. Elias was wheeled into the throne chamber on a floating medical platform. The room was vast, shaped like an open flower of stone and light. Nobles and officials lined the walls, their eyes fixed on him. At the center sat the Queen. She was immense, her body supported by a living throne that pulsed gently with energy. Her eyes were ancient and sharp. She had ruled longer than any human nation had existed. "Elias Ward," she said. Her voice filled the chamber without effort. "You entered a death zone without authorization. You disrupted command protocols. You risked diplomatic stability." Elias swallowed. His throat was dry. "Yes, Your Majesty." "Explain." He did not prepare a speech. He did not try to justify himself with logic or law. "She was there," he said simply. "She needed help." A ripple moved through the court. Some scoffed, others leaned forward. The Queen's eyes narrowed. "You understood the risk?" "Yes." "You understood you would likely die?" "Yes." "Then why?" Elias met her gaze. His body hurt. His future was uncertain. But his answer came easily. "Because if I didn't go," he said, "I'd have to live knowing I could have." Silence fell over the chamber. The Queen studied him for a long moment. Her sensors showed no deception, no hidden motive, just truth. "Your species is considered fragile," she said. "Emotion-driven. Unsuitable for extreme conditions." Elias gave a weak smile. "We know. And yet," the Queen continued, "you acted where my warriors did not." She stood. The sound echoed like thunder. "Take the human back to medical care," she ordered. "He will recover fully." As Elias was turned away, he heard her final words, spoken not just to him, but to the entire court. "Today the Queendom has learned something important." The platform carried him out. He did not hear what she said next. But across the capital, across the Alliance, recordings of the incident were already spreading. A human running into impossible fire. A human carrying a princess out of death. And for the first time, the galaxy began to wonder what else humans might do when the choice was fire or action. Elias recovered slower than the doctors expected. Human bodies healed differently than alien models predicted. His burns closed, his muscles rebuilt, but something else lingered. Pain came and went without pattern. Sleep was shallow. Dreams dragged him back into fire again and again. Still, each day he forced himself to sit up, then stand, then walk. The medical wing was quiet, but it was never empty. Guards stood outside his room at all hours, not as protection, but as observation. Scientists passed by the transparent walls, pretending not to stare. Some looked curious. Others looked nervous. Humans were not supposed to do what he had done. Princess Seralith visited him on the 6th day. She entered without ceremony, her steps light, her presence calm. She wore simple robes instead of royal armor. The guard straightened, but did not stop her. Elias was sitting on the edge of his bed when he noticed her reflection in the glass. He stood too fast and nearly fell. She reached out, steadying him with one hand. Her skin was cool, faintly luminescent. Her eyes met his, and for a moment neither spoke. "You saved my life," she said. He looked away, embarrassed. "Anyone would have done it." She shook her head slowly. "No, they did not." She sat across from him. The silence between them was not uncomfortable. It was thoughtful. "I remember fragments," she continued. "Heat, noise, then darkness, and then arms. Very warm, very solid." Elias rubbed the back of his neck. "I was mostly panicking." A small smile appeared on her face. "You panicked forward." That word spread faster than the official reports. Panicked forward. It became a phrase used by strategists and philosophers. To humans, it sounded normal. To others, it sounded insane. After her visit, things changed. Elias was no longer treated like a patient. He was treated like a variable. Officials requested interviews. Military advisors asked questions about human emergency training. Scientists wanted scans of his brain during stress. He refused most of them politely. "I'm just a guy," he kept saying. But the queendom did not believe in just anything. The queen summoned him again. This time, Elias walked into the throne chamber on his own feet. His steps were careful, but steady. The nobles watched him closely. Whispers followed him like shadows. The queen did not speak immediately. She studied him in silence, her gaze heavy and sharp. "You recovered," she said at last. "Yes, Your Majesty. You defied instinct, probability, and command." "Yes, Your Majesty. You showed loyalty to a throne not your own." Elias frowned slightly. "I wasn't thinking about thrones." "Exactly," the queen replied. She rose again. But this time there was no anger in her movement. Only intent. "My people value order," she said. "We plan. We calculate. We survive by control." She stepped down from the throne. Each movement was deliberate. "Your people," she continued, "are chaos contained within rules you break when it matters." The court stirred. "This frightens many," the queen said. "It should." Elias felt the weight of the room pressing down on him. "If I did something wrong." "You did something rare," the queen interrupted. "You acted without asking who deserved saving." Her gaze sharpened. "That is dangerous." A pause. "And powerful." She turned to the nobles. "The fire was not an accident." The room stiffened. "It was sabotage," she said. "A test." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Someone wished to see how the queendom would respond under impossible conditions. They wished to see if fear would stop us. Her eyes returned to Elias. They did not account for humanity. The queen raised one hand. Screens activated around the chamber, showing data Elias had never seen. Security breaches. Energy signatures. Foreign technology. Hidden inside the spire. "Enemies exist who believe we are stagnant," she said. "They believe humans are weak tools to be discarded." I2BD. I2BD. She let the silence stretch. "They are wrong." Her voice hardened. "And I intend to show them." Elias felt uneasy. "Your Majesty, I didn't mean to start a war." "And?" The queen's mouth curved slightly. "You did not start one." She leaned closer. "You changed the rules." After that day, Elias was no longer allowed to return to his old quarters. He was moved to a secure residence within the inner city. Guards followed him openly now. Some saluted him. Others watched him, like they expected him to explode. Princess Seralith visited often. They spoke about simple things at first. Earth food. Alien music. How strange gravity felt on different worlds. Slowly, deeper conversations followed. Fear. Responsibility. Choice. She asked him once, "Do humans always run into danger?" He thought for a moment. "No. Most of us run away." "Then why didn't you?" He answered honestly. "Because someone had to go the other way." The attempts began 3 weeks later. The first was subtle. A maintenance drone malfunctioned near his residence. Its tools spun out of control, barely missing his head. Security shut it down seconds before impact. The second was clearer. Poison introduced into his nutrient supply. Human metabolism reacted badly, but not fatally. Doctors traced it to an off-world compound. The third was violent. An explosion tore through the transit corridor while Elias and Seralith were inside. The blast threw them apart. Smoke filled the air. Alarms screamed. Elias crawled toward her without thinking, dragging her behind cover just before the ceiling collapsed, where she had been standing. Security forces arrived moments later. This time, there was no doubt. Someone wanted the human dead. The queen responded with speed and fury. Entire factions were detained. Borders locked down. Surveillance expanded. But the attacks did not stop completely. The enemy was patient. Hidden. Watching. During a private audience, the queen spoke plainly. They fear what you represent, she told Elias. He sat stiffly across from her. I'm not a symbol. You are, she said. Whether you wish to be or not. She studied him, then added, and symbols can be protected or bound. Elias frowned. Bound how? The queen did not answer immediately. Days later, she announced it to the court, to the alliance, to the galaxy. Preparations will begin, the queen declared, her voice carrying across every channel. For a union between the queendom and humanity. Shock followed. Make preparations for the wedding, she said, her eyes fixed on Elias. Human. The chamber erupted in chaos. Elias stood frozen. The queen's expression did not change. This is not punishment, she said calmly. She leaned back into her throne. The fire revealed many things. Her voice dropped, cold and certain. And we will no longer pretend humans are beneath the flames. The announcement did not calm the galaxy. It shook it. Across dozens of systems, reactions came fast and loud. Some worlds celebrated the idea of unity. Others panicked. A few powerful factions went silent, which worried the queen more than open anger ever could. Elias did not celebrate. He sat alone in his new residence, staring at the city lights outside the window. The buildings curved like living things, glowing softly under artificial skies. Somewhere beyond them, ships moved in careful patterns, carrying news and fear to every corner of known space. A wedding. Between him and Princess Serelith, he was still trying to understand how saving someone from a fire had led here. Princess Serelith arrived quietly, as she always did. She did not knock. She never needed to. You are thinking too loudly, she said gently. He gave a weak smile. I do that. She stood beside him, looking out at the city. For a moment, they said nothing. This union was not my idea alone, she said at last. But I agreed to it. He turned to her, surprised. You did? Yes. Why? She met his eyes. Because I saw what you did when no one was watching. He looked away again. I just reacted. She shook her head. No, you chose. That word followed him everywhere now. Chose. Security around them tightened as the date approached. The Queen's intelligence network uncovered fragments of a larger threat. Groups that had once dismissed humans as weak now feared them as catalysts. Humans changed outcomes. Humans broke predictions. That was unacceptable to those who ruled by certainty. Assassination attempts increased, but changed in nature. No longer clumsy or rushed. These were careful, layered, designed to test response times and weaknesses. Elias was no longer the target. The symbol was, an attack struck a human diplomatic vessel 2 systems away. Another targeted a Queendom relay station. Each time, blame was denied. Each time, evidence pointed nowhere solid. The enemy was preparing something bigger. The Queen called Elias into a restricted council meeting. Only her closest advisors were present. Maps of star systems hovered in the air, glowing red and blue. They are waiting, she said, for the ceremony. Elias crossed his arms. Then delay it. No, she replied immediately. That is what they expect us to fear. She turned toward him. You once ran into fire because waiting meant loss. He recognized the challenge. We run forward, he said slowly. The advisors exchanged uneasy looks. We do not know how. One admitted. Elias studied the maps. He was not a general, not a politician, but he had seen patterns before. In machines, in systems that failed, because no one expected them to behave badly. They're watching for strength, he said. So don't give them what they're measuring. The Queen tilted her head. Explain. Everyone thinks power looks the same, Elias continued. Big fleets. Big weapons. Clear lines. Humans don't fight like that. One advisor scoffed. Humans fight with chaos. Elias nodded. Exactly. Plans changed quietly. Instead of increasing visible military presence, the Queendom began inviting smaller species into cooperative roles. Engineers, medics, traders. Humans were placed in mixed teams, not command positions. It looked weak. It was not. On the surface, preparations for the wedding continued. Decorations were built, rituals practiced, messages of unity broadcast. Behind the scenes, networks formed. When the attack finally came, it did not come as a single blow. It came as everything breaking at once. Power grids failed across multiple systems. Communication relays went dark. Automated defenses turned against their own stations. Ships dropped out of hyperspace, blind and confused. The enemy revealed itself through action, not words. A coalition of old powers, species that had once ruled before the Alliance existed. They believed order was maintained only by dominance. Humans threatened that belief. They struck at the capital itself. Alarms screamed. The sky above the city rippled as enemy vessels emerged from stealth. Shields flared, some failing instantly, under unfamiliar weapons. Panic spread. Elias was in the central command hub when the first explosions hit. The room filled with overlapping voices. Data streams collapsing into noise. Communications are down. Defense grid unresponsive. They're inside the perimeter. Elias did not freeze. He moved. He grabbed a console, rerouting power manually, ignoring automated warnings. "Stop trying to fix everything," he shouted. "Fix one thing." An officer stared at him. "Which one?" "People," Elias said. "Get them talking." Human technicians paired with alien signalers, using outdated, low-tech channels the enemy had ignored. Short-range bursts, physical messengers, visual signals. Slow, reliable. Princess Saralith coordinated civilian evacuation, her calm voice steady even as the ceiling shook. She trusted Elias without needing to see him. The Queen watched it all unfold, her expression unreadable. Enemy boarding parties breached outer districts. They expected resistance. They did not expect cooperation. Civilians guided soldiers through maintenance tunnels. Traders rerouted supplies without orders. Humans moved where gaps appeared, filling them instinctively. No single commander controlled the defense. Everyone did. The enemy grew frustrated. Their strikes hit, but did not break morale. Each loss was met with adaptation, not collapse. Elias found himself leading a mixed unit through a damaged transit line. He did not give speeches. He pointed, listened, adjusted. When a section collapsed, he rerouted through fire again. Not because he was fearless, because someone had to go the other way. At the height of the chaos, the enemy flagship revealed itself above the capital. Its weapon charged, aimed at the palace. The Queen stood alone on the highest balcony, watching. "Human," she said softly into the channel. Elias heard her voice through static. "Yes? You once carried my daughter from the flames," she said. "Can you do it again?" He looked at the map. At the power levels. At the impossible distance. He did not answer immediately. "Then, I'll try." A small ship launched from the palace hangar, barely shielded, packed with volunteers from half a dozen species. Engineers, pilots, soldiers, medics. They did not match enemy strength. They did not need to. They flew straight at the flagship, broadcasting openly. Not threats. Not surrender. Coordination. Every allied unit focused fire not on the ship, but on its support systems, guided by real-time human improvisation. Shields flickered. Weapons misfired. The flagship never fired. It withdrew. Across the systems, enemy forces followed. The attack failed. Silence fell slowly, broken by cheers, then relief, then exhaustion. The Queen closed her eyes. The galaxy had changed. When Elias returned, battered but alive, Princess Saralith met him at the hangar. She did not embrace him. She simply rested her forehead against his. "You came back," she said. He smiled tiredly. "I promised." Above them, the city burned in places, but it still stood. The city did not sleep after the battle. Lights stayed on across the capital, not in panic, but in quiet watchfulness. Crews worked through the night, repairing streets, restoring power, helping the injured. There was damage. Yes, but there was also something new in the air. A shared understanding. They had survived together. Elias walked through the outer districts as dawn approached. No guards followed him closely now. People recognized him, but they did not crowd him. Some nodded. Some placed a hand over their chest in respect. Others simply smiled. He felt uncomfortable with it. He stopped near a broken plaza where volunteers were clearing debris. Without saying anything, he picked up a tool and joined them. No one told him to stop. Princess Seralith found him there an hour later, lifting fallen panels alongside humans and aliens alike. She watched for a moment before stepping forward. "You are not required to do this," she said. "I know," Elias replied, setting down a beam. "But it needs doing." She helped him lift the next one. Across the capital, similar scenes played out. Soldiers took orders from civilians. Nobles worked beside laborers. Humans were not in charge, but they were everywhere, connecting groups, solving small problems that added up to something big. The queen observed from the palace, her advisors silent around her. "They did not fracture," one finally said. "They adapted." The queen nodded slowly. "They always do." Reports arrived from across the alliance. The enemy coalition had withdrawn completely. Their leaders vanished into deep space. Their authority broken. Worlds, once controlled by fear, began opening negotiations, not because they were threatened, because they had seen another way. The wedding preparations resumed, but they changed. There were no displays of power, no massive war fleets hovering overhead. Instead, delegations arrived in small numbers. Representatives from species that had never stood together now shared halls and meals. The ceremony was no longer just about union. It was about declaration. Elias stood in a quiet chamber the night before the wedding, adjusting his formal clothing with unsteady hands. The fabric was unfamiliar, woven with alien patterns and human simplicity. He stared at his reflection, barely recognizing himself. An engineer, a rescuer, a symbol. He exhaled slowly. Princess Seralith entered, dressed not as royalty, but as herself. She dismissed the attendants with a gesture. "You are afraid," she said. He nodded. "I don't know if I belong here." She stepped closer. "You ran into fire for someone you barely knew. That was different." "No," she said gently. "It was exactly the same." She took his hands, careful of the scars still visible on his skin. "This is not about you being perfect," she continued. "It is about you being human." The word no longer sounded small. The ceremony took place beneath an open sky dome, the stars visible above. Thousands gathered in person. Millions more watched across the stars. The queen stood at the center, her presence calm and commanding. When she spoke, every sound faded. "Today," she said, "we bind more than two lives." Her gaze swept across the gathered species. "We bind two ways of facing the universe." She turned toward Elias. "Humans are not the strongest," she said. "They are not the oldest. They do not claim perfection." A pause. "They claim responsibility." Murmurs spread. "They do not ask who deserves saving. They ask who needs it." The queen looked at her daughter. "And that," she said, "is why the fire did not win." As the vows were spoken, no one interrupted. No alarms rang. No attacks came. The galaxy watched, holding its breath, as the union was sealed not by force, but by choice. When it ended, there was no roar of applause. There was something quieter, deeper, relief. In the days that followed, change spread faster than any fleet could travel. Joint human-alien task groups formed organically. Not ordered, but requested. Humans were asked to help design emergency systems. Not because they were smarter, but because they planned for failure. Where other species aimed for perfection, humans planned for things to go wrong. And when they did, humans adapted. Elias did not take a throne. He refused titles. He worked. He traveled with Seralith to worlds still rebuilding trust. He listened more than he spoke. When asked why humans did what they did, he gave the same answer every time: because someone has to. The queen aged, as all rulers eventually do. But her final decree was remembered long after. "Never underestimate a species that runs toward danger," she wrote. "Especially when they do not do it to rule, but to help." Years later, children across the Alliance learned the story. Not as a legend of war, but as a lesson. When the fire came, the strongest did not survive. The ones who moved did. Elias stood once more at the edge of a high balcony, older now, his hair touched with gray. The city below him glowed with life. Ships of every shape moved freely through the sky. Princess Sarilith stood beside him, their hands loosely intertwined. "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly. He thought of the flames, the fear, the choice. "No," he said. "I'd do it again." She smiled. Somewhere, deep in the stars, new fires waited, and humanity would run toward them not to conquer, but to carry others out. The galaxy knew that now.